Hi there, it's David here. Just wanted to follow up on a question I've been getting quite a bit the last few weeks. It's early May here in 2020. The question I've been getting a lot is about the Forecast Network tool, and the question is some form of what questions are you watching the most? What questions are you closely monitoring in the Forecast Network? And just wanted to provide a quick look at those and talk about that a little bit. We've got quite a few questions here. The one that I'm interested in the next few weeks and months is on the gasoline consumption. We got an article here that looks at the data quite a bit, and sort of this 9.5 million barrels per day is where we should be for U.S. gasoline consumption or implied consumption. And so the question is, between May and August, will we get back to uh, above 9 million barrels per day? We're around 5.5 or 6 million barrels right now, the lowest levels we have in 30 plus years of data. And so this first question here is, when does the U.S. start to consume oil or gasoline specifically at a more normal rate? So 9 million barrels per day. Will we get above that? That starts to be the low end of the normal range. This follow-up question here is, uh, will the U.S. get above 10 million barrels per day? And if I turn on the consensus, you can see I think there's a pretty good shot that we're going to get there before the end of August. The consensus, however, is a little bit lower, about 62% is where the consensus is right at the moment. I'm a little more optimistic, I guess, than the consensus. On the 10 million barrels, this would be a record high level. This would be this idea that the U.S. economy bounces back really strongly, and exceeding 10 million barrels per day on a weekly average would be a record high. Will we hit a record high between May in August here in 2020? I put it at a 20% chance, 21% specifically. The consensus is closer to 40%. So I'm a little more optimistic about us getting back to 9 million, getting back to closer to normal, but not as optimistic about the upside potential here. The other question that hasn't been talked about a lot lately that I think is really valuable, it goes back to the phase one trade deal. It's the total value of U.S. ag exports to China. As a reminder, uh, we're not putting as much emphasis on does China meet its agreement. We're looking at this more a little bit farther away, saying, hey, does China get over $35 billion in ag purchases here in 2020? And 35 billion would be, you can read the background article here, but 35 billion is well above any level that we've seen in history. So the goal is, will China buy more in 2020 than in the past? My consensus, I got up to about a 50% chance after we signed that phase one there in late January. And I've since backed it down as Corona has been coming in. I'm about a 10 or 12% chance. Not as optimistic as the consensus. The consensus is closer to 20%, but similarly, we saw this ratchet up of expectations as the phase one trade agreement came into place, then a bit of a dip. The consensus has actually been, responding to these reports of China coming in, still making a lot of purchases, especially in the meat side, and rumors to make purchases on the soybean side. So we'll see how this one plays out. I'm a little not as optimistic on that one. So we got several questions in here. Of course, we're going to start thinking about yields here in 2020. Where are we at for the possibility of above trend yields for corn and soybeans? Still have acreage to work out. A few policy questions still on the table, and of course, macroeconomic issues to wade through. So these are the questions that I'm thinking about the most. Look forward to having you go in, update your expectations, and update your forecasts. Again, thanks for checking us out.